Love becomes true only when we believe in it. And no matter how hard we try to pretend, if it's not true, it's not true. Because love doesn't lie. But once love becomes violent, then it becomes questionable. This is the Love Clinic presented to you by Elvis Sumbele.
يا جماعة أنا عايش في دبي هنا. طبعا الحياة مختلفة عن مصر، عن أي مدينة. بنتكلم دلوقتي عن حرية المرأة، بنتكلم عن إن المرأة ليها حقوق، وإن طبعا لازم حقوق المرأة تبقى موجودة ومتاحة معانا. فطبعا أنا من رأيي الشخصي إن ما ينفعش إن أنت كزوج أو إن أنت كفتاة إن ما ينفعش يحصل تعدي، ما بينكم، لأن الحياة ديمقراطية. لازم يبقى في ديمقراطية في الحياة، وزي ما حضراتكم شايفين ان الدنيا متفتحه هنا للغايه. فلازم فكر الرجل يختلف تماما عن انه يأذي بني ادمه او يستعبد بني ادمه او يعمل اي حاجه تضر المراه، لان المراه زي ما هي ليها حقوق، زي ما هي برضو مش عايز انسى دور الواجبات للمراه ان هي ليها حقوق. والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.
Domestic violence can be caused as a result of anger.
La violence domestique, c'est quand la femme se comporte mal à la maison, quand la femme manque de respect à son mari. The main thing here is cheating in relationships. So when your partner finds out that you're cheating, you two can end up fighting, and you can even end up killing each other, you know.
For me, domestic violence is a period where married people involve themselves into fight, misunderstandings, lack of communication.
Ladies against their men and the men against their wives. The things are not going on with them correctly or in the right way. So they are turning this anger and this to their each other.
Welcome back to this new edition of the program The Love Clinic presented to you by Elvis Sumbele. Today, our sponsor is Fancy Plaza. Fancy Plaza is found in Dera near Gift Gallery. It's a fashion shop. They deal with male fashion, female fashion, and kids. You want to have the best shoes? Call them. You want to have the best outfits, suits, shirts, trousers, anything fashion, contact Fancy Plaza. They are there to answer your questions. Even if you want to do international demand, you want to inquire wherever you are, they will supply you because they have a great network around the world. Today we are talking about domestic violence and passionate crime in the context of relationship and marriage. You know, once we are in a relationship, we get into relationship because we want to be happy. We all get into relationship because we want to consummate that very beautiful moment. We want to have a partner, we want to have somebody who we can look up to. We want to have somebody close to us whose head can be linked with our own, and we share ideas. Want to get into a relationship because we need somebody whose shoulder we can lean on and cry when needs be. But when relationships start getting violent, then it might lead to passionate crime. But then, you might ask a question: what is passionate crime in the perspective of relationship and marriage? A passionate crime in the context of relationship and marriage is an act of murder committed against a loved one out of acute jealousy or heartbreak rather than a premeditated act. Before we dive into the topic of today, I would like us to take a look at this footage. Let's watch.
On May the 3rd woke with the news of a female lawyer, Udeme Odibi, who was alleged to have stabbed her husband to death in their apartment at Diamond Estate, Songo Tedo area of Ibejuleki, Lagos State. And just as the media frenzy was subsiding, boom, June the 1st, another woman, a teacher, was alleged to also stab her husband and father of two to death in Ikorodu area of Lagos. Armed with this, our crew decided to visit the area. The family, it appeared, lived in a house alone, surrounded by bush. Right behind me is where Dare Akim Bobola and his wife lived until that fateful night. What we are told is that it was early in the morning when he was stabbed here. He rushed out here to the road and finally, you know, he slumped here, and you can see the slippers and there are blood stains everywhere. This is a recording of the couple after the stab, as given to us by a source who witnessed what happened afterwards.
He
was not sleeping. He was beating me. He used weapons available to torture me. When the beating was too much, I was confused, didn't know what to do. I decided to use the knife to scare him away, but he did not leave me alone. He also locked the door and did not allow me to run away. He always maltreated me, and my family always advised me to divorce him. But I insisted, because he's the father of my children. He always tortured me. I really suffered with him. You can also ask our neighbors about it.
Video. What transpired until that lady had to kill her husband. Now this is what I mean by passionate crime. Crime of love. She did not really premeditate that she wants to kill her husband. From her explanation, she was just trying to defend herself. You know, from her explanation, the husband locked the door, and when she picked the knife, she did not pick the knife because she wanted to kill the husband. But then she thought that once she holds the knife, the husband will be scared, and eventually he will let her go, and you know, she can maybe open the door and go out of the house and de-escalate the situation. But unfortunately, you know, one thing led to another, and the husband lost his life in the process. So now this is what I want us to look at. Whatever the situation is, whatever the case is, dialogue. Dialogue is the answer. If you feel provoked, if you feel angry to an extent, then it is very important. It's very, very important to maybe walk out of the house, or try as much as possible, you know, to put yourself down. I know, you know, they say woman's power, a woman's strength is in her mouth, you know. But now let's look at some aspects that might lead to domestic violence. But please, before I go, permit me give an explanation, a small explanation in French. Aujourd'hui, nous parlons de la violence domestique et les crimes passionnels. Dans le monde aujourd'hui, beaucoup de gens perdent leur vie par amour. C'est-à-dire, un partenaire prend la vie de l'autre. Donc, ce que j'essaie d'expliquer, notre sujet d'aujourd'hui, c'est que nous allons voir, après la vidéo que vous avez vue, nous allons voir ce qui peut causer la violence domestique, qui peut pousser à devenir un crime passionnel. Maintenant, regardons un peu ces aspects. One of the factors that might lead to domestic violence is loss of trust. You know, once trust is lost in a relationship, it's very difficult. Now, trust is one of the fundamental aspects that maintains the stability and longevity of a relationship. So once it is lost, it's very difficult to regain. So whatever the case is, however the situation is, if you really want to be in your relationship and you want to, it's always very important to communicate. Try as much as possible to maintain trust in your relationship. Once trust is lost in the relationship, I bet you that relationship, the foundation of that relationship starts shaking. So try as much as possible not to lose trust in your relationship. It's very, very, very important. Maintenant, notre premier point ici, c'est quoi? Perte de confiance dans une relation. Ça, c'est l'une des choses qui peut pousser à la violence domestique. Vous savez, la confiance est l'un des aspects les plus fondamentaux qui garantit la stabilité et la longévité d'une relation. Oh, le français. Vous savez, quand on perd la confiance dans une relation, c'est très, très, très difficile de le récupérer. Donc, peu importe la situation, si vous aimez vraiment votre relation et votre mariage, faites tout et tout pour garder la confiance. In my subsequent edition, I think in the next episode also, I'll expatiate on, I'll talk more on trust. I'll really elaborate on that. But today, let us touch it like that. It is very important to try as much as possible to keep the trust in your relationship. Don't lose the trust. Now, I'll just give you some small tips. First is dialogue. Constant dialogue. Honesty. Those are things that can keep the trust in the relationship. The second point is verbal abuse. That could lead to domestic violence. Verbal abuse. They say a woman's strength is in her mouth. But I tell you, it is wrong. A woman's strength is in the power of her dialogue, which still boils down to her mouth. It means if you use your mouth very well, without being abusive, without being insultive, without being disrespectful to your spouse, he will never, I don't think he will find pleasure in, brutalizing you or making you feel pain. Because nobody who loves his wife, no man who loves his wife would like to see his wife cry. I don't think there is anyone. So it is very important to know the words you say to your man. You might be very angry. He might do some things that really get you pissed off. He might do some things that really get you out of control. But please, my beautiful ladies, please, I love you all, and I think my greatest desire is to see that you live in a comfortable and happy relationship. Try as much as possible not to be abusive verbally. Now, it is not only the women. Don't get it wrong. Let's not get it twisted, okay? It's not only the women who are verbally abusive. There are men who are very, 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 very abusive too. So, it is very important, please. Once you verbally abuse somebody, you touch that person's ego, you touch that person's internal, sensitive sensitive thoughts, and you might push the person to anger. So it's very important to not always, use some harsh words to your partner. Maintenant, le point que j'essaie d'expliquer ici, c'est l'abus verbal. Dans notre petite langue du quartier, on dit souvent diarrhée vocale. C'est-à-dire, parle trop, insulter. Ce n'est pas nécessaire d'être abusive verbalement dans une relation. Parce que ça, c'est l'une des choses qui peut pousser à la violence. Donc, même si ton mari, même si ta femme t'énerve, il t'a énervé, oui, c'est vrai, tu es fâché. c'est aussi très important de se maîtriser. Si tu peux bien te maîtriser, tu ne l'insultes pas. Tu peux dialoguer. Ça veut dire que à l'heure où la personne a fait ce qu'il a fait, qui t'a énervé, si tu peux bien te maîtriser. Mais il y a des femmes comme ça. J'ai vu des cas comme ça. Et que je les félicite. Ça veut dire que elle fait comme si rien n'était. Mais après, tu te maîtrises, tu laisses tomber la situation à l'heure où c'est venu. Parce que tu sais que si tu réagis, là, ça peut escalader à une autre chose. Donc là, tu te maîtrises, tu laisses tomber la situation. Après, tu lui demandes, mais chérie, pourquoi tu as fait ça? Ou bien pourquoi tu m'as parlé comme ça? Pourquoi tu as fait ceci? Pourquoi tu as fait cela? Lui-même, il va s'asseoir, il va dire, mais franchement, il va te donner ses excuses. Si c'est un homme qui est raisonnable, il va s'excuser. Et tu vas voir que le problème qui devait coûter peut-être une dent, peut-être le problème qui devait coûter l'œil, ça va finir par les éclats de rire. Et ça va passer comme ça. Vous allez vivre comme ça. Demandons-nous pourquoi nos grands-parents vivaient toute leur vie avec une seule femme ou bien un seul homme. Toute sa vie. Sans divorce, sans séparation. Elles sont là. Vous croyez qu'ils n'ont pas eu aussi des malentendus? Ils ont eu des malentendus de temps en temps. Mais, puisqu'ils ont compris, d'abord, la première des choses, c'est dialoguer et maîtrise de soi. Donc, the third point is naggy attitude. Naggy attitude, this is when one member of a relationship decides to, for one reason or the other, become aggressive in words. There are times, especially the women, and now I'm not saying it's only the woman who's naggy. Please don't get me wrong, okay? Don't get me wrong. There are men who are naggy. Maybe myself I'm naggy, I don't know. So, whatever the case is, for instance, you might have asked for something from your man and it's not able to give you at that particular time. Instead of becoming aggressive with words, I think it's preferable you remind him from time to time and you try to study the situation. Maybe he has not been able to get what you need at that moment, but he's working on it. So try to give him time. Try to give him time. So what I'm trying to explain is that don't always be naggy. You might have asked for something and he's not ready to give you that time, or maybe he doesn't want to give you. Don't make it a problem. Don't make it a problem. Just say, okay. The truth is, if he loves you, he will keep thinking about it, and one day he will surprise you with it. I've seen cases like that. I've had reports like that. So instead of being unnecessarily naggy, I think it's important. It's important to keep reminding the person that, babe, I asked you of this. You've not given it to me. What's happening? Then I think with time, he can better explain. Maybe I've not been able to get the money. I've not been able to reach the person that was, something will come up. Then, you talk over it and you get to an understanding, other than just becoming unnecessarily naggy. Maintenant, je suis en train de parler. Notre troisième point, c'est l'attitude agressive. L'attitude agressive. Des fois, quand on est dans une relation et notre partenaire, par exemple, surtout la femme, tu as demandé une chose à ton mari et il n'est pas à la hauteur de te donner ce que tu demandes à l'instant où tu as besoin de la chose. Des fois, on devient agressif et même pour lui parler, on lui parle avec... pas avec d'amour. Des fois, on lui parle comme si c'est un ennemi, des trucs comme ça. Moi, je dis, ce n'est pas nécessaire. Ce n'est pas nécessaire. Parce que des fois, tu peux être comme ça et il peut aussi se fâcher et ça devient la violence. Ça devient la violence. Une bagarre peut déclencher dans la maison et ça peut aussi lier à un crime passionnel. C'est-à-dire, au cours de cette bagarre, une personne peut perdre sa vie. Donc, c'est très important de se maîtriser. C'est très très important de se maîtriser, surtout quand on essaye de, vous savez, de garder notre relation pour aussi éviter des problèmes. Parce que après tout, quand on a des malentendus, quand on a des bagarres dans une relation, on n'est pas content. Il y a les nerfs qui s'étendent, il y a les maux de tête, on manque de sommeil et tout. Donc, c'est aussi très important, s'il vous plaît, mes amours, dialoguer. Dialoguer, c'est très important dans une relation. The last point is, remember we are talking about things that could lead to domestic violence and eventually lead to passionate crime. The use of drugs and alcoholism. Some people, once they are intoxicated with alcohol, they cannot really control themselves. They cannot really hold themselves. So it is very, very important to note that if you cannot really control yourself, if you cannot hold yourself, don't get into alcohol or drugs. Because at the end of the day, you might end up, killing your spouse. You might end up taking the life of your spouse. And I don't think you'll be happy doing that. I've seen a lot of people who regret after doing that. You ask them, they'll tell you, I did not mean it. Yes, it is true, you didn't mean it, but it has happened. Meanwhile, you could avoid it. You could really avoid it. But because, you let yourself being carried away, with the influence of alcohol or drugs, now you find yourself behind bars, you find yourself into trouble, and you start regretting. So please, this goes out to all my fellow brothers, you men out there, please. I know there are women too who are abusive too, who get into drug and alcoholism, and they start fighting and things like that. But please, especially the men, please try as much as possible to understand yourself. Study yourself, do a retrospect of yourself. Look at yourself. If I take alcohol, if I'm under the influence of drugs, what's my nature? There are some people whom, when they are intoxicated, all they need is just to sleep. But there are some people who become very aggressive. And in the course of that day, you might take your partner's life. You might kill your partner. So please try as much as possible to understand yourself and stay away from drugs and alcohol, especially if you are keeping a relationship. Notre dernier point, c'est l'utilisation des drogues et l'alcool, qui peut pousser à la violence et finir par un crime passionnel. Vous savez, il y a certains de nous les hommes, quand on est sous l'influence de l'alcool, on n'arrive pas à se maîtriser. Moins de choses, la colère monte. Moins de choses, la colère monte. Donc, s'il vous plaît, si vous connaissez, essayez de vous contrôler, de regarder. Si vous voyez que vous n'arrivez pas à vous maîtriser, surtout quand vous êtes sous l'influence de l'alcool, c'est très très nécessaire de l'abandonner. C'est aussi important de laisser pour l'amour que vous avez, surtout en votre épouse. Parce que quand vous êtes sous l'influence de l'alcool et vous êtes le genre qui n'arrive pas à vous maîtriser, moins de choses. Vous allez l'insulter, ou bien vous allez mal parler, ou bien les choses comme ça. Et la femme aussi va aussi parler. Et il y aura des changes de mots, de gauche à droite, il y aura des changes de mots. Et avant de réaliser, paf, une bagarre déclenchée. Et dans ce coup, une personne peut perdre sa vie. Et je ne suis pas sûr que toi, tu aimerais voir ton épouse ou bien ton époux mort. Personne ne le souhaite. Donc, en conclusion, s'il vous plaît, c'est très nécessaire de se contrôler, d'avoir une maîtrise de soi. In conclusion, to avoid passionate crimes, please try as much as possible to have self-discipline. Self-discipline in the sense that you might have a woman who is nagging. You might have a woman who is, verbally abusive. If you can discipline yourself, you can discipline her. How do I mean by that? Once you start that, try as much as possible to de-escalate the situation. Either going out of the house or changing the topic. Bring us something, something different. Something that really has nothing to do with that. Just distract her from that. And if you have to avoid the naggy attitude of a woman, what if she asks for something and you don't have that thing at that time that she asks for it? Make her understand that you are doing effort. She should see that you are really putting effort to get her what she demands for. But the unfortunate thing is that you have not been able to have it at that particular time. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of today's edition of the program. I am so grateful. I am so delighted to those who keep encouraging me, especially in my previous editions. I have people who call me and encourage me, and I still want to keep thanking you all for being part of the program. If you are just watching me for the first time, you can go back to my previous editions. I think there are some interesting topics there that might be helpful to you or to someone. Please remember to share. Invite somebody to watch. Let us make love live again. Thanks very much. God bless you. Peace.